All right, family. We are now live. We are now live, family. Woo, it's gonna be an amazing show. I've been having so many good shows lately. It's very. I'm so appreciative to be in the position I'm in on planet Earth at this time to be doing what I'm doing. And these two gentlemen, I've worked so close with them in the last 2 years, especially since 2020, since that thing hit that that everybody gets suspended about when they talk about. I've worked with these two gentlemen so close. Y'all heard me with me and Phil, and I'm telling them, yeah, and me and Billy, I'm like, yeah. So it's an honor to have a mature conversation with these two gentlemen tonight, us going to the next phase of evolution in our spirituality. We're going to have a great show. Before I introduce them officially, y'all know who they are and bring them on. As usual, let me get to a few commercials. Family, make sure you tell your friends and family. We live tonight. I better see a pack house in here tonight.
Oh, yeah.
But this is something we would have. This is like a pay-per-view event. You know what I'm saying? This is something. So y'all get this on YouTube. So be appreciative. But we're going to get to a few commercials and we'll be right back, family. All right?
Hey there! Had a bad dream? I have dreams too. Some parts are scary and some parts are fun. Always remind yourself, it's only a dream and everything will be okay. I had a dream about being in a forest too. Check it out, my pet Petey was with me. Order your copy of Kayla Petey and the Forest on Amazon today.
It's the numerational session with King Simon. Text your full name and date of birth to 347-496-1022. That's 347-496-1022. And get my books on Amazon now.
All right, family. All right. We are back. Let me just text this person back real quick. All right. Yo, real quick before we start. Billy, man, your camera's so live, you making everybody else look bad. They told me the other day, they said, Rich, man, when you gonna upgrade your camera? You see Billy camera? I said, you go Billy doing that shit again, man.
You crazy, man.
But now, shout out to everybody.
You know something? The name of my camera is Black Magic.
Yeah, you told me. They hate that something.
What?
Yeah, the Black Magic. They make amazing cameras.
Yeah.
Make
So I got the
amazing
Black Magic. I got your camera over here.
Hey, family. Hey, listen, family, without further ado, I want to welcome Dr. Phil Valentine and Billy Carson to the platform.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Amazing. And Dr. Valentine, I love your shirt. The question. Yeah, you got the shirt. The question. Listen, an amazing show. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Everybody, for you contribute to the platform just by viewing. You do so much to this platform just by viewing, and you've helped myself, Dr. Valentine, and Billy Carson so much just by viewing on this platform. So we want to start out by thanking everybody in the audience, and I want to start out by saying, Billy Carson, Dr. Phil Valentine, we're it's some interesting times we are in. We have been so thoroughly lied to. We have been so thoroughly misled, astray. I mean, that the awakening process can be an extremely difficult one for a lot of us. And I mean, to almost all of us. It was difficult for me from my beginning stages. And I remember listening to Alex Jones and a lot of the conspiracy guys at that time in 99, 2000, and moving up to where I am now. It was a hell of a journey, man. This thing we call life is a hell of a journey.
Yeah.
But the thing is, during this spiritual journey, I don't want us who's reawakening to fight amongst each other. Not because we have real beef in the street, but just because of a different of opinion. Like there's like Biggie had this song back in the day called What's Beef? Mm-hmm. Beef is when beef is something, there's no blood spilled. Nobody's talking about each other's mother. Nobody's talking about each other's kids. None of that. Just because we have a difference of opinion, a person will hate you. And that's not how it's supposed to be, family. There's many paths to the light. I have these two gentlemen on here now to offer a quantum perspective on things. When you think quantumly, you think different. Sometimes two people could think differently and both be right at the same time. You just never know when you think it from a quantum perspective. I've heard both of you two gentlemen say different things, and we're going to talk about a lot tonight, but I want to start out the show with this. And I think this is an important message in emotional maturity and learning. I've heard both of you gentlemen say different things when it comes to this topic of flat Earth. And that's a topic I haven't researched that much. I'm going to be honest.
Right.
I haven't figured out if it's that important in my human development yet, but I'm interested in it nonetheless. So I respect both of you, and I would love to hear both of you's perspectives on flat Earth versus round Earth. And hopefully we can learn from this and not fight and not hate each other and send threatening or hateful messages to each other on the internet just because somebody has a difference of opinion than you do. We're all awakening. This is a magnificent time of figuring out who we are. And I want us to enjoy the journey. It's all about the journey. I want us to enjoy this journey. So without further ado, if anybody would like to start out, there's a lot of questions, but in terms of the topic of flat Earth versus round Earth, Billy, would you like to start? Let's start out with Billy. Let the elder close it out. Billy, you start out this whole topic of flat Earth. I know you don't go for the flat Earth thing. Billy, I would love to hear your take on it, my brother.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that. First of all, I want to say I respect what you're doing here. I respect the fact that you have the courage, first of all, to do this on your platform and give, two grown men, and really, I mean, Dr. Valentine is a living legend, an opportunity for both of us to, show the world how we can actually maybe have a slightly different opinion in a topic or two here or there, but still be for the same mission, the same goal, and still have respect for one another and dignity for one another. One thing that you'll never see if you go on any Instagram or YouTube post or Facebook or any other social media platform, you'll never see a Billy Carson comment that's putting down or talking badly about the person that made that post. Although I follow a lot of people, I think I follow over 3,000 people on Instagram alone, right? And a lot of those people, I don't agree with everything that they post on that social media platform or their social media platform. If I see something that I don't agree with, I just keep scrolling. I don't comment. I just won't like it or not comment. And we have to learn how to refrain from being a reactive person versus being a logical person, and understanding that everyone is seeing something different from their own perspective. And so that's why no matter where you go, no matter what platform, you'll never track back in history. You'll never find me writing negative towards anybody on any platform. It just doesn't exist inside of me. It doesn't exist inside of my spirit. And that is the spirit that we're all supposed to be carrying, as all of us are all growing and learning at the same time in various different areas. Just because I might know a lot about one topic or presume to know a lot about one topic, there's people that may not know that much about that topic, but you guys may be an expert in something totally different. There's people in the chat right now that know 10,000 times more than me in other areas of life that I probably never even conceived of. I haven't had a chance to meet them and learn from them, whatever they're doing, right? I haven't seen them do it. They haven't taught me anything because I didn't get a chance to interact with them. But everyone brings a piece to the puzzle, and together we paint a big picture. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the Earth itself. Now, if you go back over 2,200 years, you discover that there have been people that have discovered, a way to measure the shape of the Earth. And I can go back beyond 2000, which I will here very shortly. But if you look at Eratosthenes, he used a very simple method to measure the shape and the size of the Earth. And what he did was he measured the length of a shadow from a vertical stick. This technique and method has been duplicated over and over again today in modern science. It's done in universities. It's done in high schools now even. You take two sticks and you put one stick down in one city, and then you take another stick, the same exact length and width, and you put it in another city. Or you can just go different, a mile or 2 or 3 miles away. 3 miles is the preferable distance at least. You put the stick in the ground perpendicular to the ground. You can use a level to figure that out if you need to. And then at the same time of day, you report the length of the shadow and the angle of the shadow at both locations. And from the angle of the shadow, you can calculate the shape. You can calculate the actual circumference. And matter of fact, you can calculate the entire size of the entire planet with 2 sticks. You don't even need more than 2 sticks to calculate that. It's a very simple way of calculating that. It was done 2,200 years ago by a Greek astronomer, and it's been replicated and duplicated many, many, many times in modern science. If you want to go even further back than that, you go to the Great Pyramid at Giza. The Great Pyramid at Giza is an amazing anomaly in that it's a supermassive structure made of stone, but it's a multifunctional stone computer. And I spent decades, absolute decades, climbing in it, number one, which you've seen many pictures of me inside of it, but also analyzing and accessing all the different mathematical encoded wisdom in the Great Pyramid, which a lot of it now has actually been published scientifically. And so I've had the privilege of being able to be a part of that and be a part of that whole discovery of these mathematical and encoded wisdoms that have been built into the Great Pyramid. And what it tells us is this: as far as classical physics, it tells us from that standpoint that it's a sphere. The Earth is a sphere, because we discovered that the Great Pyramid at Giza, that particular one, the largest one there, right at Giza, it happens to be a perfect match for a scale down of the actual Earth itself. If you take that pyramid and scale it up 43,200 times, it fits on the inside of the Earth. If you put it inside of a sphere, each one of the points touches a point. And if you put a second one in and make it a star tetrahedron, it'll touch even the South Pole, the North Pole, and all corners, which is pretty interesting. Now, if you look at the technology and the way that it's built, you can make a lot of calculations from the Great Pyramid. You can calculate the tropical year from the length of the base, which is 9,131 pyramid inches at the mean socket level, which is going to give you 365.24 cubits, which happens to be the number of days in a year. You can calculate, the other thing is you can calculate the perimeter of the base divided by 100 equals 365. So you can still get the year. Now, what's interesting is when you get down to the tropical year, the length of the antechamber is used at the diameter of the circle, which produces a circumference of 365. But the ratio of the lengths to the grand gallery to the solid diagonal of the king's chamber times 100 equals the number of days in a tropical year. So you can calculate all these things at the pyramid. So I'm just showing you a couple of examples. But when you get deeper into these mathematical equations dealing with the Great Pyramid, you discover something very, very interesting. The first thing is you discover that the king's chamber is right above the grand gallery, and the grand gallery, the coordinates to the grand gallery equal the speed of light in meters per second. And we discover that meters existed long before the metric system existed in modern times, because we discovered, if you even look, you can even look it up on Wikipedia Commons, you can discover that, you can see that they discovered the metric system in Proto-Sumerian cuneiform. And what's interesting about where they discovered that in Mexico. And so we know that approximately 8,000 years ago, they already had a metric system. All right, so meters per second, not a big issue. But the next thing that you discover is this. If you take the length of the base at the side, which is 365 pyramid cubits, it's going to give you the mean distance to the sun. So if you do this, if you take the length of the base at the side sidereal socket level, 365 pyramid cubits, which is accurate to 6 digits. The mean distance to the sun is half the length of the diagonal of the base times 10 to the 6th power. It's going to give you the length of the distance to the sun, the mean distance to the sun, and it's also going to give you the mean distance to the moon. And through that same calculation, you can even get the distance from the Earth to the sun, the moon, and how fast Earth is moving around the sun. So you can get a calculation of the speed of the Earth around the sun, the distance from the Earth to the moon, the distance from the Earth to the sun, and through 2 more calculations, you can actually even get the distance, the circumference of the sun itself, And then you can even get the speed of the sun around the galaxy. And what's interesting is built into all of this, of course, is the scale, 43,200. So we know that if you take the pyramid and scale it up 43,200 times, you get the sphere of the planet itself. Another thing that you can do simply as well is you can look at stand at the shore of an ocean. Like I have an ocean right here in Florida. I'm 6'4", but just assume I was 6 feet on the dot. If I was 6 feet on the dot, then when I looked out from the shore, standing right at the ocean's edge, I would be looking at approximately 3 miles. I get 3 miles of arc view standing from the edge of the shoreline at the beach. You can even see, if as you look out at the ocean, you can see the curvature as you look around. You can see that it seems to be curving in this horizontal fashion, but it also dips off, because if there's a ship sailing away from me, it disappears in the distance. But if I get on a ladder and go up 6 more feet, I gain another 3 miles of view. I can see 3 more miles out. As the ship continues to sail away, if I can go up another 6 feet, now I'm 18 feet up, I gain another 3. However, I can't do this infinitely. As the ship continues to sail away, at some point, no matter how high I go, I can't see it on the horizon anymore where the sky meets the ocean. And the reason why is because it's gone off the edge of the horizon. It's gone off my visual view. My visual view is being cut by the horizon point at that moment. If I'm standing at the top of the Empire State Building at the same time that there's fireworks going off in London, I can't see the fireworks from there, no matter how powerful of a telescope I have, because of the circumference of the Earth. It's not going to allow me to see. Somewhere by the mid-Atlantic area, I won't be able to see the bulge or the spherical shape of the Earth is going to prevent me from seeing all the way across to London. So there's just a few things that, you can take into consideration. In classical physics, everything is based on spheres. And even when you get down into the microscopic, into the quantum world, you discover that, everything is based on spheres there as well. And orbits, spheres and orbits. And so based on my understanding of quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and a lot of the sciences that we use today to shape our what we call modern world, it appears to me that a lot of the people that are working in these facilities and these places are accurate. So for example, if you take a look at the number of employees, the number of people employed at the number of universities that are offering graduate degrees as astrophysics, there's 59 universities in the United States alone. The number of people employed as astronomers and physicists has been growing at a rate of 19.9% per year, from 11,206 people in 2019 to 13,441 people in 2020. That's a lot of people studying the knowledge of the planets and movements of stars and planets and getting paid a lot of money that don't work for NASA. And they're working and doing incredible work that helps to shape our modern world today. And how hard is it to become an astrophysicist? How hard is that job to get? Extremely hard. And how hard is it to graduate for that? It takes a lot of years. You'll need to have 6 years just for your bachelor's degree, which is true for many other professions. But then comes graduate school, where it can take up to 7 years just to become an astrophysicist. An astrophysicist is a very high level physicist that has to do with the understanding of science of space. And so there are literally thousands of astrophysicists. There's tens of thousands of people in college for astrophysics and astronomy around the world. And all of them who do graduate and become work in their field, working for all these independent and private corporations and companies, and some even starting some of their own. But I don't believe that all these people are working to try to make the world think that the Earth is not flat. I don't think that's their goal. My personal opinion is that these people are working in a field where they're striving for developing new advanced forms of technology, propulsion systems, understanding movements of stars and alignments, understanding gravitational fields, understanding then also from the physics aspect, tetraons, quarks, how atoms work when they collide and separate, wormholes, Einstein-Rosen bridges, and all these other different types of amazing anomalies that we know exist in space-time, black holes, and so forth and so on. And so we know through those sciences and through those scientists through experiments done in space that everything wants to create an accretion disk, the same type of disk that you see looks like the Milky Way galaxy. But what's interesting is the Milky Way galaxy has all these objects in it that are part of this disk. In these objects, if you take a grouping of matter, just random pieces of matter in space, and just let them go, over the course of a few hours, they begin to circulate around each other and they begin to clump together. They begin to work to make themselves into a sphere. And so no matter what we do, things just want to be parts of spheres in this dimension. Molecules, from atoms to molecules, all the way up to combinations of molecules, which makes things we consider to be solid. And that also include organic things that grow as well. So my personal opinion, just my personal opinion, based on a lot of scientists that I've studied with and talked to, and my time at MIT and everywhere else, I don't believe that all these people are working to try to make us believe that Earth is a different shape. I know people that have been to Antarctica. Matter of fact, one of them is going to be has his own TV show coming out on my network. His name is Brad Olson, and we've got his footage and his coverage, which is going to be part of the show. I just don't see where it's happening. So maybe I can be enlightened. I mean, it's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
My years of research and study, that's what I came up with.
Listen, Billy, I definitely appreciate that. I'm gonna allow the brother Dr. Phil Valentine to respond. The one thing, like I said, I've never got into flat earth that deep, but you said something that I'm gonna take with me, Billy, and that is everything wants to be a part of a sphere. You kept stressing spheres. So that's something that me moving forward in the knowledge of this whole thing and understanding everything around me, that's something I'm gonna take with me. Dr. Phil Valentine, I want you to give your take on this whole subject, and then we'll move on. My brother, go ahead. The floor is yours, my brother.
First of all, thank you, Billy.
No problem. Thank you
for that. I just want to say to the family that I am going to be doing a 7-hour webinar on all that has been hidden from the scientific community, going all the way up to MIT. And I've had professors of MIT as my students. And I want to first drop a couple of simple facts that possibly each of you can also use as a kind of guidepost. First of all, if the Earth is covered by a gaseous ball of the ionosphere, the troposphere, and so forth, and space is a gigantic vacuum, other than the theory of gravity, how is it that our atmosphere stays and is not being sucked out into a vast universe that is greater than the sum of our sphere, the Earth, 25,000 miles around? The other thing is that if the Earth is 25,000 miles around, how is it that when you use a, say, sextant or what is known as theodolite measuring, these are some of the measuring tools that engineers and people who are dealing with building on the land, they use that, and they clinometer, I believe it is. And what they find is that when you shoot a laser for a mile on supposedly a curved Earth, they made the calculation that after a mile, if there is a curve based upon 25,000 miles around, then after that particular beam goes a mile, then automatically there should be a drop of 6 feet at that point. Go up about another few feet, as our beloved brother was speaking about. Then if that's the case, there should be at least a 12-foot drop, and so forth. And what I find when I was flying at 35,000 feet, that it seems that the horizon rises with you. Now, either the Earth plane is flat, or they are lying about the dimensions of the Earth itself being only 25,000 miles around at the equator. If that's the case, at 35,000 feet, I'm supposed to see the curvature of the Earth, and we don't. The higher up you go, the horizon rises with you, which means that we're looking at a heck of a lot more of the plane of Earth than is assumed in all the colleges and all of the places where people have been given that particular book to study. I wanted to also say that the flat Earth, as he said, is Aristarchus, who was the one who first actually introduced this this globe Earth principle, and he actually introduced it to a king by the name of Galen in one of his writings. And it was after that that Copernicus picked up on Aristarchus's information about a globe Earth. And what happened is that the Catholic Church at that time wanted to make sure that they completely subverted the ancient knowledge, particularly the origin of the Catholic Church itself, the origin of Christianity, the origins of everything that was based in the law at that time. 10, 20,000 years ago, everything that you see in the history of our plane of existence, every high civilization knew that the Earth was a flatted plane. Now, bringing ourselves up to there are over 200 or 300 things that I'm going to speak about, covering as much as I could at the webinar to show you that the principle of the flatted plane, which they call the flatted Earth, is ridiculed. It's ridiculed for a purpose. The fact of the matter is, scientists, renowned scientists, have been actually promoting this. The one who came along to actually subvert the movement of the Earth was actually Einstein. The introduction of the theory of relativity, and again, I keep speaking about theories, the theory of gravity, the theory of relativity. All of them are theories, which are working hypotheses. They're not theorems. They're not proven facts. The problem is that when the fact is tested to be proven, then that's when all of the naysayers, like Einstein, comes out. And of course, those who run the New York Times and so forth, they will big up those who they wish to actually promote the illusion, because we're still in that matrix. Now, the reason why I'm going to say what I'm saying is I'm going to offer scientific proof based upon scientists that have been suppressed. These are scientists that have been suppressed for their knowledge and for their works. And people like, when you start elevating things like the Coriolis effect, and you start dealing with things of that nature, which we're going to talk about as I can within the short period of time we have. Again, please understand that I'm only scratching the surface with what I'm going to be offering you. Between the years 1881 and 1887, there was a doctor by the name of Albert Michelson. Now, Albert Michelson was the first American to win the Nobel Peace Prize, the first American to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And he did an experiment that discovered the Earth was not moving around the sun. As Michelson himself said, and he described the results on his own experiments, he said, quote, "This conclusion directly contradicts the explanation which presupposes that the Earth moves," end quote. Michelson found the Earth wasn't moving by using two light beams against one another. The first light beam was pointed westward because it was the presumed direction of the Earth's movement around the sun. The second beam was pointed northward, and thus away from the direction of the presumed eastward moving Earth. The first light beam should have been affected by the Earth's movement through space if the Earth is moving around the sun at the accepted speed of 66,000 miles per hour. If so, the first beam would have traveled slower than the second light beam. Now, I'm doing this. This is a very edited, very cloistered piece of information so that you can do your own due diligence on it. Now, the first beam supposedly had traveled slower than the second light beam, but it didn't. According to Michelson, both beams traveled about the same speed. The first beam traveled only 1/6 of the retarded speed necessary if the Earth was moving around the sun. Conclusion, the Earth was not moving. But since his colleagues at that time, including Albert Einstein, who was a Zionist, a plagiarist, and a science fraud, who married his cousin and married her 2 daughters. This man that they're lionizing, Einstein Golden Bridge, Einstein this man is a fraud. And at that particular webinar, I'm going to name every one of the scientists he stole his E = mc² formula from. Most people don't know about the history, and nobody digs into who these people that they lionize as the scientist god that he's supposed to be. But you have to remember, this man Einstein worked as a patent office clerk. He worked as a patent clerk in Bern, Switzerland, where all of the great scientists of their time, the white side, were actually handing in their theses. He took from them, he stole from them, and it's proven, and I will prove it at that webinar. Now, his colleagues were all die-hard Copernicus people. They all believed that Copernicus was law, and they believed that Nicholson had discovered a motionless Earth because he thought his thinking of being a motionless Earth was based on his faulty apparatus, and it was distorted by the Earth's motion through space. And thus Michelson's apparatus only made it appear as if it was moving. In scientific parlance, this is a fallacy called petitio principii. That is, quote, and this is what it means, a fallacy in which a conclusion is taken for granted based on a majority support of the stated premise, a circular argument which begs the question. An example of petitio principii is the ongoing premise of physics and the movement of the Earth. Quote, scientists say, and this is what it is that someone would say to me. Scientists say the Earth spins at 1,039 miles an hour and circles our sun at 66,000 miles an hour. But then how do you know this? Well, because the sun is the center of our solar system and gravity does this. But how do you know this? Because all modern scientific data that I reference for validation of this fact says so. But how do they know? Well, because they're scientists. That is circular logic, and that's what we're dealing with when it comes to dealing with this particular subject. Now, there were scientists, great physicists, who took a serious look, and these were people who were Nobel laureates, who took a serious look at Michelson's work, Michelson and Morley's work. Physicist Arthur Eddington, quote, there was just one alternative, and this is based on the experiment. The Earth's true velocity through space might happen to have been nil. Physicist Bernard Jaffe, quote, the data of Michelson-Morley were almost unbelievable. There was only one other possible conclusion to draw, that the Earth was at rest, end quote. Physicist Adolph Baker, thus the failure of Michelson-Morley to observe different speeds of light at different times of the year suggests that the Earth must be at rest. It was therefore the preferred frame for referencing absolute motion in space. Yet we have known since Galileo that the Earth is not the center of the universe. Then why should it be at rest in the first place? End quote. Physicist James Coleman, the easiest explanation was that the Earth was fixed in the ether and that everything else in the universe moved with respect to the Earth and the ether. Such an idea was not considered seriously, since it would mean, in effect, that our Earth occupied the omnipotent position in the universe, with all of the other heavenly bodies paying homage to it by moving around it, end quote. Historian Lincoln Barnett, foreword written by himself, Adolf, I would say Adolf, because I don't want to play with his name, Albert Einstein. The Michelson-Morley experiment confronted scientists with an embarrassing alternative. On the one hand, they could scrap the ether theory which had explained so many things about electricity, magnetism, and light. Or if they insisted on retaining the ether, they had to abandon the still more venerable Copernican theory that the Earth was in motion. To many physicists, it seemed easier to believe that the Earth stood still than that electromagnetic waves could exist without a medium to sustain them. It was a serious dilemma, and one that splits scientific thought for 1/4 of a century. Many new hypotheses were advanced and rejected. The experiment was tried again by Morley and others with the same conclusion. The apparent velocity of the Earth through the ether was zero, end quote. Physicist Richard Wilson, okay, what happened when the experiment was done in 1887? There was never, ever in the orientation at any time of the year any shift in the interference pattern. None. No shift. No fringe shift. Nothing. So what's the implication? That the experiment was done to measure the speed of the Earth's motion through the ether. This was an experiment that was 10 times more sensitive than it need to be. It could have detected speeds as low as 2 miles a second instead of the known 20 miles per second that the Earth has in its orbit motion around the sun. It did not detect it. What's the conclusion from the Michelson-Morley experiment? The implication is that the Earth is not moving. Physicist John D. Morton. Michelson and Morley found shifts in the interference fringes, but they were very much smaller than the size of the effect expected from the known orbital motions of the Earth, end quote. Physicist Douglas Giancola. This null result was one of the great puzzles of physics at the end of the 19th century. One possibility was that velocity would be zero and no fringe shift could be expected. But this implies that the Earth is somehow a preferred object. Only with respect to the Earth would the speed of light be c, as predicted by Maxwell's equation. This is tantamount to assuming that the Earth is the central body of the universe, end quote. By the way, Encyclopedia Britannica says of Einstein's early education that he showed little scholastic ability. That Britannica also says that at the age of 15, he was diagnosed with poor grades in history, geography, and languages. He left school without a diploma. Einstein himself wrote in school paper of his lack of imagination and practical ability. In 1895, Einstein failed to a simple entrance exam to an engineering school in Zurich. Then there's something called Foucault's pendulum, the way that they tried to get you to believe that the Earth was moving and somehow the pendulum was being affected by that movement. Astronomers used to hang pendulums from great ceilings to prove the spinning motion of the Earth, not accounting for the ball and socket joint that held that pendulum, which already facilitates a circular motion. If in fact the alleged constant motion of the Earth affected the pendulums in any way, then there should be no need to manually push start the pendulum into motion, which is that every time they tried that particular experiment, that's exactly what happened. In the Coriolis effect, there was a man by the name of Gaspard Gustave Coriolis. In the mid-19th century, he performed several experiments dealing with the effects of kinetic energy on rotating systems, which has become the mythologized proof of the heliocentric theory. This effect was said to cause sinks and toilet bowls in the northern hemisphere to drain spinning in one direction, while spinning in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. What really determines the direction in which your toilet flushes, enters, and leaves your sink or toilet are the shape of the bowl, the angle at which the water initially enters the bowl, and the force that pushes the water into the bowl. And lastly, ball earth and air travel. Here's another thing very quickly. If the Earth were truly a ball or a sphere, airplane pilots would have to constantly correct their altitudes nose down so as not to fly straight off into outer space. If the Earth were truly a sphere, curving 8 inches per mile squared, a pilot wishing to simply maintain their altitude at a typical cruising speed of 500 miles per hour would have to constantly dip their nose downward and descend 2,777 feet every minute of the flight time, yet if the nose is not adjusted for. A plane flying at a typical 35,000 feet, wishing to maintain that altitude at the upper rim of the so-called troposphere, in 1 hour would find themselves 200,000 feet high into the mesosphere without their correction for the Earth's curvature. Without compensation for the curve, in 1 hour's time, the pilot would find himself 35.1 miles higher than expected. Some heliocentrics would argue that gravity magically keeps the airplanes at a perfect altitude around the curve, without any need for compensation of travel around the ball Earth. The round ball Earth is said to be spinning from west to east to greet the sun's rising every day. If the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, west to east, and the plane were to take off from California to New York, cruising at the same direction at 500 miles an hour, it would never be able to land, because the Earth below it would have been traveling much faster and at a faster rate of speed than the plane could actually catch up with it. And in closing, in the introduction of his book, The Mismeasure of Man, by Stephen Gould, he says, science is a socially embedded activity. It progresses by hunch, vision, and intuition. Much of its charge or change through time does not record a closer approach to absolute truth, but an alteration of cultural contexts that influences it so strongly. Facts are not pure and unstudied bits of information. Culture also influences what we see and how we see it. Theories, moreover, are not inexorable inductions from facts. The most creative theories are often imaginative visions imposed upon facts, and the source of imagination is also strongly cultural. With that, I will close it out, and I will give you a 7 and 8 hour breakdown of the scientific principles of the flatted plane, not flat Earth. That's a misnomer. Flatted plane, and I hope that people who are out there will open their minds to understand that we have been living in a matrix and we've been duped up to this point.
All right.
Thanks for letting me know that, Billy. It was amazing hearing both perspectives back to back. That hits different from reading something on the internet than hearing both perspectives back to back was amazing. And I'm glad that we can express that in a mature fashion and not hate each other like how we see on the internet.
My love for you guys. You have to understand how I love you brothers and what you all are doing to advance the open mind of our people, you know?
Indeed.
Same here, man. Same here.
Indeed. There's many paths to the light. I'm an interviewer and I talk to so many people with so many different ideas and perspectives. It's great to have two brothers come on the show and just express their ideas about reality at the same time. That's amazing. I love this. This is amazing. We're gonna continue. We're gonna go on to the next question because I know we're pressed with time. Billy, whenever you have to leave, I know you got a flight to catch. Whenever you have to leave, just let me know because we're gonna keep rolling. I got some great questions for y'all. But whenever you got to go,
I'll try to hang out as long as I possibly can.
Hang out as long as you can, Billy, because tonight we got almost 4,000 people in the room, man. Tonight is one of them nights, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to hang out, man.
Listen, hey, Billy, Dr. Valentine, moving on. One of the most important things for us as a global community moving forward is what we call food. What we eat, what we ingest. And as we all know, for lack of better words, our food supply is kind of fucked up right now. So it's like, even, you know, they say be vegan, but even if you're a vegan, there's so many tricks that they got for your vegan ass that it's all, you know, they'll catch you either way. Whether you
That's why we recommend the Juice Plus.
Yeah.
But listen,
that's why we recommend the Juice Plus.
Hey, this is what I want to ask y'all now.
Yeah.
So remember, the name of the show is quantum perspectives of God. We're thinking with a quantum mind now.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about food, we know food isn't just about what we eat.
Mhm.
Food can also be what we listen to, what we see on television. Food can be a lot, what we ingest and take on as light. So I want to ask you this. Let me show you a picture. Let me show you this picture real quick. So we got food. We got our vegetables. They say, stay away from the meat, eat the vegetables. We got something in a tomato, right? We got a tomato. Tomato's supposed to be healthy for the heart and a lot of other things. And we got something called cymatics. Cymatics is what they call the study of sound, frequency, and vibration made visible. So if we, Doc, you know where I'm going, Doc. So if we know, check this out. If we know the sound vibration of vegetables, the sound vibration of a tomato, which it looks identical, that's in front of us. Let me see if I can stretch this. This cymatic frequency looks identical to a tomato. So in the future, moving forward, if we know our food supply, like I said, is messed up, if we know the frequency of that tomato and we could ingest it through sound form, can we eliminate the need for stressing over food by just observing or listening to the cymatics of that food, the sound frequencies of that food? Because they say the physical material universe from Adam on up is an acoustic phenomenon. Talk to me about cymatics and the future of food.
Well, that's a powerful image that you just showed. When you look into string theory, you look at the universe as literally strings that are vibrating that are creating these particular frequencies, and these frequencies are emanating or jingling what we consider to be the elementary particles into existence. And so, if you look at the back of a leopard, you're going to see those spots. If you look at the stripes on a tiger, you're going to see those stripes. Right. And those things are actually part of the frequency that's emanating throughout the entire universe. So for whatever reason, in the embryonic stage, that leopard, it picks up that particular frequency, that point dot frequency, and that's what gives us its stripes and so forth and so on. So we know that the frequencies that exist, the cymatic frequencies that exist in space-time, have a direct effect on things that we look at every single day in the way that they're shaped, form, develop, and grow, including the human body. And so we know that, human beings are also affected by these same exact frequencies. And there was a man named Prahlad Jani, and I have this documentary on Forbidden Knowledge TV. It's on my TV network.
Okay.
And Prahlad Jani has not eaten solid food for over 30 years.
Ooh.
30 years. He's a breatharian. And so they took this guy and they put him in the laboratory because they said, we got to check this out. We got to find out if this guy is really living off of light frequencies, light waves, photons. And they put him in this laboratory. They gave him water for a bath, and they would actually reweigh the water to make sure he wasn't drinking the bath water, right?
Yeah.
They would also make sure that the bath water wasn't disappearing other than what would normally be absorbed maybe a little bit by his skin. They didn't give him he didn't drink water either. They didn't give him any water to drink. They gave him no food. 3 months. 3 months this man is in this laboratory. People are watching him, monitoring him, multiple cameras everywhere. He's only allowed to gaze at the sun for a few hours a day. And according to him, he said, I can live for hundreds of years in this body since he became this breatharian. This man is literally living off of photons. Is it possible to digest frequencies and somehow get them to sustain the body? Scientifically, I believe it's possible, because what do cells need to keep the body going? They need energy.
Yes.
Right? That's what it is. So when you're eating food, the food then creates, it breaks down, it's absorbed in through the cell wall, some of the nutrients, and those nutrients then give energy. Now, of course, there's various different nutrients. And so you would have to be able to balance all the hormones and nutrients. That would be very difficult to do. But in a future civilization with future technology or understanding, or maybe a more advanced way of consciousness, it could be possible that a person could absorb the frequencies of particular elements, and then the body would know how to convert that into what it needs to keep the mitochondria going, power the cell the proper way to keep the body going. It's a hypothetical possibility, you know what I mean? So it's something that could happen. But after I seen paralyzed Johnny, I believe anything can happen.
Yeah, sure you're right. Sure you're right. The word you chose a beautiful word, Brother Rich. Quantum.
Yes.
The word means the smallest amount of a physical quantity that can exist independently. Now, the cymatics that most people speak about, we say here at our university, is the reverberating word of God. As the word made flesh. It's the word made flesh they talked about in John 1:1. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. What is emanating essentially is a blueprint for third density. And third density essentially is a kind of magnifying glass. The sun itself that hovers above us is only about maybe 4 to 5, maybe 6 to 8,000 miles above us. Most people talk about it being 93,000 miles away. That's not true. If you were to deal with the Masonic sextant and you see the rays of the light coming through the clouds, you would see that the cloud's rays come to a particular point, and that point could be measured where the sun is emanating that, as far as the diffusion of the light through the clouds. What we are actually light breathers, and we are water breathers. As water breathers, we think we're breathing oxygen, but we are not. We are breathing the plasmatic tincture of the sun through the water that we call the atmosphere. And as we breathe it into our lungs, our bronchioles become the channels that essentially changes the water into wine, which is our blood. So that exchange at the end where the alveoli are is the part where Jesus Christ changes the water in making new vessels into new wine. So if the brother can actually breathe, we are breathing in. He's breathing in the solaric, what I call the direct menu of God. He's breathing in the solaric forces that has been titrated through the atmosphere that we call air or oxygen and so forth, nitrogen. This is a water medium that water breathers like ourselves are breathing in, and he is being nurtured by just simply breathing in the water that is what we breathe in, essentially. We only need water because we have to protect the cells against the crap that we eat. We need that constant, liquefying in order to protect the cells against the garbage that goes into us through what we breathe, through what we eat, what we drink. So we get thirsty, yes, and thirst actually happens when there is a destruction of cells, and the body calls for that. And the amount of sweating that we do nowadays because we want to get into the gym, we don't realize that we're sweating out nutrients. The ancestors at the time, back 10,000 years, they never sweated because that's almost like bleeding. And just
I never heard of that, Doc. Sweating is like bleeding?
Yes, and crying was also, if you notice, the black, our melanated and indigenous children, the babies never cry. When the Europeans used to come in to indigenous places, they never found a crying baby. Only after they were destroyed, their civilization was destroyed. A crying baby, it means that the mother's not doing something, correctly. They had a I'm just before I turn the microphone back over. There was a documentary called it had to do with the civilization of Earth, the original civilization of Earth, and the French took a set of people over to Africa in order to study malnutrition. And what they found there were children that were being raised at 7 months, were toilet trained and had an ability to communicate with the mother without words, and were far more advanced than European children, and they wanted to know why. And they adopted that as it was the cradle of civilization, was what it's called. It was on PBS, and they took that off. Why? Because Black children at that time were so close to the mother. They've never left the mother's heat for the first year. And there were always somebody with their hands on that baby. and the white professors and the researchers found that the child was so advanced that they had at 1 year at 11 months they had the mastery of shapes down and the mastery of being able to say language. The whole thing about us is that we have left our fundamental humanity and we've adopted the Europeans' way of dealing in a hostile environment, because every environment he came up in a refrigerator, we came up in an incubator, and his refrigerator mentality is what we've been adapting, which is why we suffer the way we do.
Mm-hmm. I want to move on to the next question. Like I said, we're pressed with time. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we hear constantly in the New Age community, what we call the New Age community, because we forgot who we were and we're being lied to extensively, mm-hmm. is the topic of gratitude. And they say gratitude, when you tap into gratitude is wonderful because it's a frequency of receiving. So when you're in a state of gratitude, you end up receiving more. And the more gratitude I display, the more I figure out, and I really feel it, I start getting more of that ish. You know what I'm saying? So gratitude is a wonderful frequency to experience and to display constantly. But the thing is, we're often appreciative for material things that we've manifested. Like, let's say a home. Let's say my son got accepted into a school. Let's say my business is doing well. Let's say I found a woman. Let's say a woman found a man. But one of the things that a lot of people don't give gratitude for, and this is interesting, is the empty space around the material objects. Now, Bobby Hemmett talked about the space between the notes, the silence between the notes being the key that creates the beauty in the music. When you have one note to another note, that space in between, that's where the beauty comes from. The space and the silence in between. So just same way, the space in between the notes, the space in between material objects creates a certain beauty because it creates a distance, it creates this, it creates geometry, it creates whatever. So talk to me about what would happen, do you think, if we started giving appreciation, not for the material we receive, but for empty space?
Well, that was a powerful thought, actually, because as you're saying that, me being a producer as well as you, yes. Understanding, notes and music and seeing the spaces now, seeing the empty spaces in between the notes that I'm creating and the beats that I'm creating, you can actually take the empty spaces between an actual song, and then you can figure out where the notes and beats were. So it's a reverse type of a map. It's like taking a map and putting, or a picture of something and turning it into a negative.
Right. Okay.
It's the same exact thing. And so when you take a photo of something and you turn it into a negative, back in the day before, some of these kids on here might not remember that you have to take a photo with an actual camera and take it to get developed. And then they give you the negatives inside the package with the photos. Remember that, Dr. Valentine, right?
Oh, are you kidding? There you go. Look at that. Another gray hair to this group.
Oh, man.
But what's so interesting is looking at the negative of the photo, you can still see everything in the photo, but just from a different perspective.
Indeed.
Indeed. And so that really, it's a great question you just asked, because I've actually never heard that question asked that way before.
Thank you.
That we're talking about looking at an incredible universe. We know that we have, what they're saying is dark matter and dark energy and everything else. These are the beauty of those empty spaces, which is creating everything that we see. But also, just even in the smaller things, even within this room, there's empty spaces. There's what appears to be spaces between things. Even when you decorate your home, you create space between things, and that space helps to define the beauty of what you're trying to create. So, appreciation, though, and being very appreciative and thankful is a powerful, powerful tool for manifesting. When you can get to the point where you actually are grateful and thankful and appreciative directly from the heart chakra, like really from the heart. And when you tell somebody, somebody gives you something, you say, "Oh, thank you." That's like a robot. We're programmed, "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you." And we don't feel that emotion of thank you. We just say it because it's the polite thing to do. When you get to a point where you truly actually feel that emotion of thank you as you're saying it, the gratitude as you're actually saying it, that's where the power and the gratitude is. When you can come to a point where you're humble enough to feel that gratitude and really truthfully be thankful for everything that you have, then you find out that the universe just opened up and everything just falls right towards you. I mean, literally. And when I started learning about this about 10 years ago. I started experimenting, doing my own thought experiments. So I would do my thought experiments and I would go around and I would just be politically correct appreciative, and I would see what would happen. Okay. And then I would wait a few more weeks, and I would go and I would be heartfully appreciative and grateful and thankful, and then to see what happens. And every single time I did this experiment, the same thing happened. I got more blessings coming my way when I was heartful and thankful and appreciative than when I was not, when I was pretending to be. And I said, wow, out of 10 times for this thing to work 8 times, there has to be something here. So there's something huge about this thing. And when you get into that mind state and you can make it a habit where you truthfully from the heart, being very thankful all the time to no matter what it is, to just your surroundings, the blessings that you have every single day, the fact that you're able to get up and walk around, if you're able to do that. Some people can't even do that, you know? If you have a bicycle, be grateful for that, because some people can't even get on a bike and ride it because they don't have legs. There's so many things to be grateful for down so many different levels. And so when I began to realize that, stop and smell the roses, right? And just give thanks for that. That's when I started to see this huge wave of just blessings just continuously to come my way. But the trick is you can't do it for the blessings. If you do it for the blessings, then that's the fake heart. That's the fake heart chakra. That's the dead one. That's the politically correct one. It has to be sincere. And when it's sincere, you will see the result manifest in your life.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Absolutely. In our school family, we teach the space between thoughts. And what it is our thoughts get in the way because we're always dragging up the past. The thought is a mechanism of the past. There is no future thought unless it has been calculated and imagined from what you have experienced of the past. So all thoughts are nothing more than cataloging of experiences. And what we do is that we rely on our thoughts to maintain a sense of existence, of permanence. And our thoughts keep us actively indulged in ourselves. And we don't understand that these thoughts are suffused with pain, with anger, with frustration, with disappointment, with all types of hurt and different anguishes and jealousies and so forth. So every time we bring up thought as a means for pacifying or comforting ourselves, we've lost it. What we have to find within ourselves is that at that aspect or area of intelligence, because beyond thought is intelligence. In fact, the silence that is in between thoughts is where you find intelligence. When you can stop the thought process from interfering with your observer's observation of the silence, it is that space between the thoughts that it frees you from all of the different quirks that you have, all the symptoms of pain and so forth. So we teach at our university that the thought process becomes an internal dialogue that maintains our sense of beingness. But because we are trapped in the past, we always reference the future based upon the past. And there's an anxiety that grows. There's this type of desperation that grows because our thoughts keep us occupied. The thoughts need to be there. They exist. They're like our children. We have them connected to ourselves because our judgments maintain them. They're like children that don't grow up. They keep pulling at us. They keep tugging at us. And the emotions that go with the thought that was created at the time, say you had a bad breakup, and the emotion at that time and the thoughts that happened at that time, you've connected an emotional signature to that moment. And every time that moment comes back, the emotion comes flooding back. And they want to live. They keep pulling at you, these thoughts. I want to live. But when you stop them, when you no longer give them the attention that they cry for, when you no longer hear them screaming like crickets in the night, you don't know where they are. You just know the crickets are out there because you can hear them. When you can no longer focus on them as the priority in your meditations, then that's when that space that you speak about opens up. And that is the direct area code to God.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying this conversation. Moving on to the next question. They say technology emulates the technology that we use, the computer, the phone, all of this stuff emulates the technology that we have built inside of us.
Mhm.
So I want people to understand spirituality, and maybe by describing it in a technological way, they can understand it better. Just like the whole concept of Wi-Fi and downloading. Everybody says, I got to download it. It helps everybody to understand how we communicate with that prime source or the quantum universe. So let's use technology real quick for a second. So they say an IP address, an IP address is a unique address that identifies a device on the internet or the local network. An IP address allows two devices, the sender and the recipient of the internet communication, to find and exchange info with each other. So if we're computers, biological computers, and we have IP addresses, how does my IP address from a technological way identify? Let's say my mother passed away. I want to communicate with her. How does my IP address identify or communicate with her IP address? Because she's on another network, but I can't see her, but I want to communicate with her.
Well, it's pretty interesting. First of all, you know that definition of an IP address is pretty accurate as to what we are experiencing in the third dimension in this corporeal avatar body, in my personal opinion. And so, we look at the as above, so below from the ancient Cymatics principles, and you begin to realize something interesting, that we're experiencing in this life, in this avatar body, what the universe is doing as a whole. And what I mean by that is this. The universe itself is a giant mind, in my opinion, and we have a mind in our avatar body. And so we're just a fractal of the whole. We're a smaller picture of what really is going on. And so if you look at the human mind, it's encased in darkness. It doesn't know anything. It can't tell anything that's going on the outside, but it has friends: hearing, smell, sight, touch, right? All your sensory perception. And so the brain talks to its friends and say, hey, friends, I need to know what's going on out there. Please go out and collect me some information, collect me some data. So the friends go out, touch, smell, hearing, sight, and so forth. They go out and they collect data. Now, the friends themselves can't decipher the data. They're collecting the information, but they don't have the capability to discern it. They bring it back to the brain. The brain says, thanks for the data. The brain sorts it all out in a few microseconds and then projects a hologram as to what it believes is going on outside. We navigate through that hologram based on that projection from data collected by sensory perception. Okay. And so, you look at this and you see, wow, well, what does that mean? Well, I believe that there's one radio station. If you look at the divine universal consciousness as a radio station in your neighborhood, it's broadcasting out multiple frequencies, multiple radio stations. I'm 99.1. That's my IP address. You're 99.2. Dr. Phil is 99.3, and so forth and so on. Consider those your IP addresses. You're able to pick up a dot number frequency coming from that radio station. Your avatar body is specifically tuned to pick up a particular portion of the frequency, giving us the illusion of individuality. When in true reality, there is no individual. We are all one, experiencing life subjectively from different perspectives, because we all are slightly tuned to a dot point number of a frequency that gives us the illusion of being separated. But separation is also an illusion. And so I believe that we are all the same entity walking in the flesh, trying to decipher what it's like to be Billy Carson, Dr. Phil Valentine, you, Richard, even a blade of grass, even a rock. And all of us, you said two-way transmission on the IP address, are all collecting data like our five sensory perception is for the brain. We are the sensory perception in the avatar body. It's collecting data by living the life and then transmitting it back to a higher dimension, to your higher self. Your higher self is in a higher dimension. And so I believe that's the mode of communication that's going on, that we're literally on a data collection mission and we're transmitting it back to source. That's how I feel it's operating.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. the IP address in our university is the pineal, the epiphysis dorsi. Your IP address is your own individual epiphysis dorsi. It's your broadcast and receiver for higher consciousness vibrations. The communicating with your mother, for example, is not a energy that can be spoken into third density, because third density is an impediment. And what I mean is that we, as the avatars of God, are existing in a compression zone of 1,600 pounds per square inch. It's as if you were, for instance, to go down about 10 miles or 5 to 6 miles under the ocean, say in the trench, in the Pacific Trench. The pressure of what's above you is going to bear down. The water pressure is going to bear down on you based upon that. Well, as we as souls, spirits, came into this density that we see, this water density that we call our atmosphere, it is holding us together. But we did not communicate with the voice. The vocal part of us only became more sophisticated in for the last maybe 50,000 years. Our communication was pineal to pineal, brainwave frequency to brainwave frequency. That's why our ancestors in Kemet and the Kemet-U, they always wrote in pictures, because you dream in pictures, you think in pictures when you are calling memories and so forth. There was always some kind of picture that comes to match. Say, for instance, you have a nightmare. The nightmare is coming to match a particular feeling or perception. So you draw from the bank of experiences, maybe something that you saw on television and so forth, and that brings you your nightmare. It connects with that particular vision of what you've had for yourself. So understanding that the vocal cords right now are what we just, this is the newly developed way of communicating. Our old way of communicating was always mind to mind, and we did so in pictures, which again is, if you were to do a meditation on some, on say the what they call what is the one that was in Seti's in Pepe's sarcophagus, the codes that you see. If you were to meditate on the Medunecha, you would begin to pick up the one who actually was drawing and putting those figures together, because the brain communicates in pictures. And so you can actually get in contact with mom, but you have to silence the thought process. The thought process is of third density. If that gets in the way, it brings the emotions that match that particular thought density to this plane. So you have to lose the particular figurations of thought and get into the space as spoken about earlier, get into that null zone. And that's where the communication takes place. That's where there's no longer any impediments to what you imagine. Remember, that's your emotional body. Your emotional body is necessary for not only procreation, but for communication. And instead of it being emoted so that the body begins to feel and goes through this intense feeling that the emotion gives you, you then channel that emotional energy outward and call upon your mother, and she'll talk to you in your sleep.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely powerful, man. I mean, you two are titans, man. I mean, the way y'all breaking these quantum perspectives down. Wow. Moving on, we're gonna keep moving. We're gonna go fast with this. We're not gonna just dwell on one thing. We're gonna keep it moving. In terms of divine thoughts, this is something I've noticed. People will read something, they will read ancient texts, they will believe it. They will say, damn, we gods, y'all. We are ancient gods. We are, a lot of people will say, I am God having a human experience, and they will believe that. But when it comes time to using that thought to imagine something in a human event, like let's say, since I'm God having a human experience, I'm Brother Rich, I'm gonna have 100,000 viewers watching my show. They can't do that. They won't do that. It won't penetrate human events. They believe it in some type of ambiguous. I don't know if that's the right word, but some type of multi-dimensional way of thinking. They believe, they know I am God in a multi-dimensional way of thinking. But when it comes time to human events, I'm God, so I could do this. I'm God, so I could do that. I'm divine, so I'm going to have the most magnificent child or the magnificent wife. They don't believe that. It ends there. It stops there. It stops there. So talk to me about us tapping into that God frequency, but when we use the technology of imagination, we don't use that. We can't use it. There's a blockage that occurs when we try to use that technology to use it for human events. You got to explain this to me.
Wow, another great question, but you hit it on the head, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
One thing is when a person hears the knowledge and the wisdom, they get that gnosis and that understanding, and then they begin to, oh wow, I believe I'm God walking in the flesh. I'm a fractal of that power. The same divine spark that created everything that exists in the entire universe is in every atom inside of my body, thereby meaning that power is imbued inside of me. How do I tap into it? And so they begin to hear the teachings and hear the knowledge and read the texts and study and research and then begin to believe it. But the thing about learning information like this type of divine occult knowledge, and also then consistently applying it, it takes something called practice. You see, you don't just pop up like a wizard of Oz and command everything until you begin to make it into a habit. Understanding what your power is, walking your power, understanding the difference between ego and walking in your power. Like you were saying earlier, I'm God, I'm this, I'm that. That's actually not God, that's ego. Understanding the power and the nature of what's inside of you and walking in that is all about self-reflection, self-talk, positive self-talk, service to others, unconditional love, gratitude. This is what walking in your power really is. When you're walking in that frequency, that's a high frequency. Now, things that you're thinking about just fall towards you. Things that you may speak on just fall towards you. Things that you're working on, they begin to fall toward you. Opportunities open, windows open, doors open for you because you're on the right frequency and you're practicing that frequency and you're always consistently checking yourself. Oh man, I'm having some negative thoughts right now. I had this happen to me the other day. I was at a restaurant and everything was going wrong. I mean, the food, the napkin and the fork had food on it. The cup was dirty. You know what I'm saying? They forgot I was there. I didn't exist. They came back. They gave me my food. The food wasn't cooked right. And now I'm getting agitated, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm getting agitated. And now I'm like, man, why did I even come to this place? And now the negative thoughts are creeping in. The more negative thoughts creep in, the more frustration, the frequency begins to shift. I'm losing my God power now. Thought by thought, by thought, by thought, by thought, by word, my God power is now shrinking. And so another thing that happens is if you don't check yourself, you stay in that frequency for the rest of the day, maybe even longer than that. And everywhere you go, everything is now manifesting darkness. So you're attracting darkness, low vibrational stuff. One problem turns into 10 problems. 10 problems turn into 100 problems. Things you didn't even perceive were going to come and hit you. Boom, here they come. You have to be able to check yourself. I stopped myself and said, wait a minute, hold on. Hold on a second. Let me check myself. This waitress could be having a bad day. The cook could be having a bad day. The dishwasher could be having a bad day. My life is great. So at the end of the day, I can always get up and go somewhere else and have me another fresh meal somewhere else. At the end of the day, my life is great. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I'm safe. Matter of fact, I left a full tip. I got up and I walked out of there in a gratitude mindset. And guess what? As soon as I left out of there, I got a phone call about a business thing I was working on, and it all closed and went through. Didn't even think about that deal anymore because it sounded like it wasn't going to happen. The people were talking about, well, we got to talk more about this and that, whatever. I get the phone call. I'm on the way home. So it's a done deal. I'm like, oh my God, this is too easy. So it's all about the mindset and getting in that right frame of mind. And those are the things you're walking in. You're walking in that high frequency. And when you're walking in that, that's what walking in your God power is, and commanding things into existence. It has nothing to do with walking around thinking, man, I'm going to create this thing. This has to happen for me because I'm a God. That's not the right mindset. It's all about practicing the finer details of the things that make you a God, a true God. And when you practice that stuff, then the other stuff is a side effect. The abundance is a side effect. Manifestations are all a side effect of you walking in that consciousness.
Excellent. I want to take it from the point where ego essentially steps in. At our school, we talk about ego, and we use it very sparingly because it becomes an entity unto itself. We no longer say that we do not say that this is us. We change the word ego to the adverse use of free will. Free will was actually what we exude in every act that we deal with, however we wish to behave, whatever it is that we wish to do, and so forth. So what we say, instead of saying ego so that it becomes almost like a curse or something that you're afflicted with like a virus, we say that when you examine yourself and you begin to understand how you're thinking and how you apply your free will to the behavior patterns that you are dealing with at this point. Like you said at the restaurant, you did an excellent job by seeing, instead of you yelling and screaming, what you did was you took into consideration that they were trying to take your power, that your power was being etched away from you, and you could almost feel it like a lack, the way alcohol takes away your discernment and so forth. So what you did was essentially, instead of your free will, because you had the will to choose and yell and scream and so forth, you took that moment to use your free will towards making that point an empowering point. What did you find out about yourself? That you're greater than any moment that could attack you. You're greater than any moment that you feel could subsume that power that you know you exist, and you did not commit. That moment was trying to be your kryptonite.
That's exact. Yeah.
It was trying to be your kryptonite, but then you said no, because whatever that is not stronger than I am. You see.
Man.
So what you are dealing with at this particular time is, how do you exercise free will so that you free yourself from whatever will challenge you?
You see? I like that.
I'm glad, Dr. Valentine. I'm not just, and I want the people to understand this, I'm not just here talking to get views. I'm learning as I'm asking questions, and that's the reasons why I come with the questions that I ask, is to learn.
Great questions, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to say this before I ask the next one. I just learned from that question I asked. I'm gonna tell you something. I believe I got a test. You talked to Dr. Valentine about getting tested, and I don't think I passed the other day. I'm not going to say what it was, but I kind of didn't pass. So I'm going to use Billy example. Billy, I'm going to learn from you. And next time I get presented with something like that, I'm going to redirect my perspective and my outlook on it. And I'm going to try to pass it. And I look at it from an ego perspective. So yeah, I'm glad that you said that, Billy, and I'm glad that Dr. Valentine gave the response he gave, and I'm look forward to learning from that, and I know everybody else is as well. But I'm gonna look forward to learning from everything that happens to me in my life and pass every test. And with that being said, the next question: one of the biggest issues that we face in the world today is childhood trauma or past trauma. And one of the things about past trauma or childhood trauma is that the people will tell you, you can't change it. Leave it alone. You got to move on. You can't change it. What I want to do tonight is I want to approach it from a quantum perspective, as we've been doing with the whole show. That's what makes the whole show great. So we're approaching childhood trauma or past trauma from a quantum perspective. So if you view it from a quantum perspective, you understand that if I got a flat tire when it happened, I may be sad, but 10 days later, I may look at it and laugh. So if I look at it and laugh 10 days later, I'm no longer viewing the past as something bad. It no longer has a hold on me because in the future, I looked at it as some past. Now, in the future, I could also look at it as a devastating event that triggered more bad things that happened to me. So in that future event, I could look at it from two perspectives, as a laughable event or as something that was a trigger for just a snowball effect for bad things that continue to happen to me. So those two perspectives in the future could change that past, but they tell us you can't change that past. But if I view it from a different perspective, it impacts the future or the present in a different matter. So talk to me about viewing the past in a quantum way and changing this perspective in the past. And I want to use this example. Let's say, it maybe sound ridiculous to you, but I want to use this example. Let's say Michael Jackson, Joe Jackson abused him. Let's say Michael, when he got older and he said, damn, I got abused. And instead of saying I got abused, Michael said, listen, that was an extreme preparation to be one of the greatest souls that ever walked the face of the earth, which he is. Michael was one of the, Michael Jackson? Everybody know Michael Jackson. So what if Michael viewed his childhood? It was extreme, but it had to prepare me for an extreme future because I was going to be an extreme deity to exist on this earth. So talk to me about changing the past with your current perspective, which they say we can't because the past is concrete.
Well, it's pretty interesting. Again, another phenomenal question. I mean, you got the passion going tonight, Rich.
Thank you. Thank you.
You got the passion.
Thank you.
Which is great because I'm somebody's trying to hit me over the head because we got to go, but I'm trying to hang on as long as I can.
Yeah.
Because this is a great conversation.
Yes.
And so thank you also, Dr. Phil Valentine. So now what we're talking about here is understanding that the past affects our current day, our current time frame, our current mindset on how we are operating right now. If you are a person that had a tumultuous childhood, I had a very tumultuous childhood. If you know my story, it was pretty brutal. And now people have had worse than me, no doubt. But I came from extremely meager beginnings. I came from underneath the ghetto, Opelika, Florida, which is unincorporated Dade County. I grew up in the Bermuda Triangle, which is this steel gate that was built around Opelika to keep the crime on the inside. Witnessing murders at the age of 7 and 8 years old, right on my block, right in front of my house, seeing the blood from dead bodies in the street and seeing people pour the Coca-Cola, the parents pour Coca-Cola on the blood to eat it out of the street, the tar and everything, and seeing the chalk lines and everything else and people getting stabbed, getting jacked by the crossing guards going to school, having to just figure out how can I get into school without getting robbed by the crossing guards. I mean, these are the things that I had to think about growing up. My father was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and he was kind of abusive as well. And my mother was unemployed, and so we lived in this crazy situation, this very dysfunctional family situation, in this very impoverished state, eating Cairo syrup and toast for lunch and dinner at times, and surviving on matzo crackers and butter. This is the kind of stuff that will destroy a lot of kids, right? A lot of kids will be so traumatized from that. And they were, because a lot of my friends from that neighborhood either are dead or locked up. And the ones that made it out, some of them are abusers. And the very small amount that made it out that aren't abusers, are okay, like myself. The percentages are really, really bad for the amount of people that make it out and make something out of themselves. And so I went to Dr. Daniel Amen in California, and I got a SPECT scan of my brain. The show is available on YouTube. It's called Scan My Brain. When he scanned my brain, he saw a trauma pattern in my brain. He read my brain like he was reading a book. Yeah, It was crazy. He said, you had a bad childhood. I was like, wow. He knew stuff about me that nobody had even known just from analyzing my brain scan and seeing what parts of my brain were lit up, and the patterns in the brain dictate what's wrong with you. He saw a trauma pattern. He said, but in my case, I developed something called PTG, where most people develop PTSD. I said, well, what's PTG? He said, I developed something called post-traumatic growth. And so what happened was, where a lot of people, those things happen to them, and they always look back on them and reflect on them and let them eat them up on the inside. I look back on those things, but I let them motivate me to be better, to do better, to find better ways, to learn how to play and navigate through the matrix, to find other ways to maneuver and take care of myself and my family in better ways and to not never be in that situation again. And so it's two different perspectives and two different ways of seeing the problem that happened in the past. I analyze it from a perspective, how can this make me better? They analyze it from a perspective as this is my life and I succumb to it.
Right.
And this is going to control me until the day that I die. And so their cellular memory and their conscious memory are all fighting in the ancient times of their own past. And they have become a prisoner of the past. And to fix that problem, you need to do the shadow work. You have to begin to work on yourself. You got to spend time doing the things that help you to free yourself from that mental prison and that cellular prison. And a lot of them will be considered biohacking in some ways. A lot of meditation, self-help books, psychotherapists. People are afraid to go see psychotherapists and so forth. I'm not afraid. Go see a psychotherapist. Brain training through NeuroOptimal. This is a phenomenal way to help the mind. Do trauma release exercises. There's trauma release exercises. We taught one in the workshop we just did from a licensed trauma release specialist that was created by an MD, a real doctor. All these things you can begin to work on yourself and try to work the trauma out of your body and then start focusing on a better future for yourself. One thing that I did, again, another thing, just subconsciously, my book, Woke Doesn't Mean Broke. I dedicated that book to my father. He was an alcoholic, a drug addict. He died, about 5 years ago now as a result of a police beating. But why would I dedicate a book to him? Well, he's the one who forced me to start doing book reports at an early age. So without him forcing me to do those book reports, I might not have become as astute as I did and have retention of information as I did, starting from a very young age, which allowed me to become the person that I am today. Whereas another person would have said, man, that guy was just a drunk and an alcoholic, was a bum. He never came home. He had babies out on the street and blah, 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 blah. I couldn't stand him. Hey, he was suffering with a certain level of depression. His mother died when he was 16. His dad left the house when he was 5, said he was going out for a pack of cigarettes and never came home. So he ended up getting very depressed and turned to drugs and alcohol. I had to have the understanding for that. I had to have the compassion and the empathy for that. So instead of letting that past traumatic experiences of growing up in that condition, in that situation, destroy me and tear me down, I took another step even above. Let me dedicate this book to my dad. My other book I dedicated to my mom because she's the first person that told me about she didn't call them aliens. She called them advanced beings visiting Earth. She told me that in 1978. All right, 1978. She told me to go to Peru. That's why when I went to Peru, which is a big part of that book, I dedicated that book to my mom because before aliens was on TV, before UFOs and all this other stuff was on TV, we had 4 channels back then, and mostly it was just news. And at 12 o'clock midnight, you got the white snow. It wasn't nothing to watch. And she told me about this, and so she had some type of foreknowledge or whatever. But again, she allowed us to grow up in those conditions. I could have hated her. I could have been angry at her. So you have to rise above your prior self. You have to rise above the things that have tried to hold you back and keep you down and put you in situations that you think, this is why my life is this way, and this is why my life, that puts you in the mindset of victimhood, that victimhood mindset. They did this to me, and this is why I'm like this, and they did that, and the man is holding me back and all. That's all victimhood. You got to get out of the victimhood mindset. You got to shift your mind into growth mindset. Okay, this happened here. This was bad. Work on myself, try to fix myself. The second thing is forgive yourself. Don't wait on some outside source to come and forgive you. You forgive yourself. You forgive others. And then you bless them. You bless yourself. And then you move on and grow from that and figure out what good things can you take out of the situation, if any. What can I use to build and grow on that? And you focus on the good things and leave the past in the past.
Excellent. Excellent. I think that each one of us who have been cast upon the path, and like yourself, if you look at all the superhero stories, each one of them had trauma before it released their powers to them. And the trauma, or the crucible as I call it, which is what you suffered through, I did to myself. My grandfather was very abusive. For punishment, I had to kneel on a broomstick, if you understand what that's about. Things of that nature. Back in those days, they didn't know anything, because when I heard from my mother when I was coming up, because I had to leave to my family's in Trinidad, And so what I found out from my mother, who told me, because she was the griot of the family, she told me that my grandfather used to be tied to the bed by his father. And was not allowed to eat if he said or did the wrong thing, that type of thing. So trauma gets handed down. But the one thing that we have to understand is that the trauma is calculated and cataloged in the thought. That trauma is either a crucible that releases the superhero or creates the supervillain. And we have to choose at that point the higher part of ourselves, because 9 times out of 10, when we signed that contract to come back into the avatar, so that we become the feedback mechanism to God itself, so that God knows essentially itself through our feedback, which is through our emotional feedback, that relay system that we've become to that intelligence that's above us. When we are feeding back our experiences, we have a choice, and that's the thing that the Most High doesn't have. The Most High has to stay the Most High. But when the Most High becomes us, we deal with choices. And those experiences that we beam back to the Most High is based upon what it is we choose to become when the crucible hits us. Your crucible made you who you are, Billy. And Billy, I look at you and I look at your eyes, focus into your eyes, and you'll see that you have what is known as the lower sampaku. It means that the sclera beneath your eyes, beneath your pupils, are white underneath. That's the sign of a sage.
Wow.
Because what is happening is your so-called third eye, which we call the first eye, is pulling the dual eyes up towards the pyramid is there in your forehead, and the 2 eyes are the base of the pyramid. And so you see things from a very high spiritual perspective. You are destined to be that. You see. And so when we learn that thought is the calculus for what we become, and when we learn that our thoughts carry the pain, when we understand and understand that when those thoughts become our what we call our petty tyrant, the petty tyrant that's spoken about in Don Juan, that petty tyrant whips the hell out of us, beats us down, but then it either crushes that coal into a diamond, or it crushes it into the powder, and you essentially become this diffused serial killer, or somebody who's blaming everybody else for your trauma. You see. So I know that once you understand that your thoughts can be your teacher or your tyrant, it depends on the choices that you make when you are thinking the thoughts about that trauma. You see, the society wants you to continue to feel traumatic about your own experiences. That's why they create these psychologists and psychiatrists. They want to hear more about it. Keep bringing your pain out. That means that you're going to face it. No, sometimes the brain is created in such a way to make sure that you don't have to deal with that and you can go on with your life. But most people don't know how to do that. They'll go to religion, or they go to a philosophy and so forth. They're diverting themselves from facing that issue within themselves. It only grows. Whatever it is that you do not do to address it directly, it uses whatever you think that you're going to use to do it as a feed to grow bigger, and comes back to you much more concentrated and much more deadly. So I recommend, and first of all, I commend you too for all of what have you've done and what you've accomplished in holding on to the minds and hearts of people who trust you. That's the thing that you all have created within your whole sphere of influence, trust. And you have to understand that I cherished my reputation, even though it was, it ain't the best of the best. I'm a jackass and an asshole from when I was young too. But once you understand that essentially it's a crucible that you grow into, and that you're here to serve, you don't use this intelligence. You can become, they're telling us how to use our intelligence in TV shows like, what is it, Empire and everything. Why we got to use our intelligence to prey upon our own people instead of pray for our people, right? To uplift them. So what I would say to you, beloved brothers, keep doing what you're doing as an elder. I'm in my 70s now. And I'm looking down and I'm saying, well, what the hell is going to happen with all this? Well, I'm glad to say that you guys got hold of the torch and you all are taking it forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I want to hurry up. I'm going to move to this next question because we're moving at a fast rate tonight.
Yeah.
You know, I heard a black woman the other day, probably about 2 weeks ago. She was crying. I don't know the gentleman's name from Memphis. There was a gentleman who recently got killed by the police. It was all over do any of you know the name Nichols? Or I don't want to.
By the four black cops? By the four black
yeah, by the four. I don't want to mispronounce his name, dude.
Tyree
Nichols, something like that.
I think
I apologize for not knowing his name and mentioning him, but yeah. So she was crying about the situation, and she was saying, "God, why does God like? It's a hell of an experience being black in this realm. Like, if you're black, you're just like, God damn, when does it end? Generation after, like Billy just talked about." His father being killed by police. Yeah. Billy know what I'm talking about, and I'm sorry to bring that up, Billy. But it's like when does this end? So I was thinking I was trying to think from a quantum perspective and not from a reactionary, angry perspective. And I had the thought. I said, if they, just being metaphysical myself, and they say we're a walking universe, and there's a universe inside of us. If ourselves are sentient. And sentient means being able to perceive or feel things. And we treat our body the way we do. We don't look at ourselves as being sentient. We abuse our bodies. And our cells are probably screaming, please stop this shit. Why are you doing this again? Why are you doing that again? Oh my God, this shit is crazy. Why is God treating us like this? So I'm thinking to myself, maybe God, because this is supposed to be an illusion. This is Maya. The ancients had many names for this realm. It's not supposed to be real. Maybe God looks at us. We're screaming, God, I'm black. Why do you treat black people like this? God's like, this is an illusion, nigga. I'm not concentrating on that. We treat ourselves a certain way in our body. Maybe God treats us the same way.
You sound right. I'm telling you. So God turned and said, this is an illusion, nigga. What you crying for?
Talk to me about God treating us the same way we treat ourselves.
I'll answer this one, then I gotta gracefully bow out.
Yes, sir.
So it's too funny. There's an old parable in the Bible, and I'm an expert on this Bible. I read everything. I probably read that book over 100 times. But there's a parable in the Bible where Jesus is out talking to his disciples, and a few other people had locally gathered by him. And there's some old structures a few feet away, kind of across the street, and some women are walking by. It's a very windy and gusty day. As they're walking by these dilapidated structures, the wind is blowing. Some stones from the top of this building fall and crush the women while they're walking by. The first thing the disciples said, the same thing this lady said, oh my goodness, why would God do that? And another disciple said, they must have been with sin. And Jesus looked at them in so many words to sum it up. He said, no, man, they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know what I'm saying? And so what that tells me is, it's not, God's doing this to teach this lesson, and he's doing that, and this and that. I think that we're living in my personal opinion, this is a fractal holographic universe. We're in a matrix, I believe. The matrix is imbued with divine light, divine photons, and energetically, we're all imbued with this divine nature, but also there's this yin and this yang, and there's also something in this universe called entropy. And you learned about this in physics, and entropy is when things move from an ordered state to a disordered state. Second law of thermodynamics, right? And so everything, we found that entropy is even in your body, because you are born and you grow up and then you live, and then your body begins to decay and then you begin to die. Cells don't replicate the proper way. DNA doesn't replicate properly. Your telomeres run out of buffer material and then you pass away. That's entropy. Entropy is in everything. It's in structures. If you build a structure and you don't take care of that structure, you come back in 50, 100 years, that structure is going to be falling apart. If you don't cut your grass, it's going to get weeds in it. That's all entropy. And so in this program that we're living in, which is, I believe, it's one of these things where you turn it on and this mass consciousness is trying to extrapolate every dimension all the way down. We know that, we don't know, it's a theory, but that there's 11 dimensions. Also, scientists in 2022 just discovered that the brain perceives in 11. Now, they factually have been able to do this experiment over and over again, that the brain is actually perceiving in 11 dimensions, which is incredible because the theory of 11-dimensional universe is matching now what the brain is perceiving. And so all of a sudden, I believe that we're a fractal of the whole. The whole thing has been turned on, and now we're living through this experience in this avatar body, collecting information, sending it back to source. What is it like to live in the third dimension? And this thing is just on its own wavelength. It's moving and it's changing and evolving moment by moment. And so right now, I can jump up from this microphone and run out of the room, and there'll be an empty seat here with the microphone, and I'll be gone. Or I can sit here and I can continue to talk. So each one of those decisions has a consequence, and the Cymatics principles is the principle of cause and effect. So every decision you make is going to have an actual consequence, whether it's a good consequence or a bad consequence. If I make a decision to run out of here, hop in my car and race down the street, I might crash into something tonight. That's a consequence based on the decision that I make. See, so just because things happen to people, the person, the kid decided to go to this particular location at this particular time. At the same time, these cops show up. These cops are now, they're agents of the Matrix. They're soulless avatars operating purely on Matrix programming code, from epigenetics all the way back to everything you can think about, the programming coming in from the media growing up, the programming coming in from their own parents growing up, and the outside sources, all that programming turn these people into soulless avatars. The police departments know they're soulless avatars because they only hire people with no souls.
Woo!
That is what the whole psychological battery exam is all about.
That's
They
what it's
are
about.
looking for people that will
With
take
soulless.
any order you give them, and they know they have no soul. They will kill a person, a kid, a child, and go home and kiss their baby and lay down. That's a soulless avatar. Operating purely on the Matrix program code. That's it. That's all they hire. They don't hire anything else. If you seem like you have any sense of empathy on that psychological battery exam, you're not going to get hired. If you look like you might not take an order, direct order, and execute a direct order, you won't get hired. So this poor kid happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, driving where he was going, and these soulless avatars, he ran into them, and that ended up being his fate. Now, due to my belief in reincarnation, I mean, that kid is already back in one form of energy or another in and it could be in any dimension, any time frame, because past, present, and future exist at once in higher dimensions. It could be in the future. He could be in the past. It could be a different gender by now. We don't even know. It could be a blade of grass. But the thing is, at that particular moment, his energy that was being held into his corporeal body was released and transmitted in somewhere else in the universe.
Okay. That's great. That makes a lot of sense. I'd like to pick up on your anthropic theme, because encoded in every part of us in third density is chaos. The chaos seed is there. In my new book that I'm writing called the Quantum, talking about Earth, and what I find in chaos is it's a necessary component, because with each incarnation, it brings it back to the raw material for you with your new experience to actually carve out something brand new. In other words, that's what the steps of the root races are about, from the first all the way to the sixth, which we are the sixth root race at this point, transiting to the seventh. And so chaos has to come, because it provides us the canvas upon which we as new beings come in to actually exercise what it is that we didn't do before. What can we do better to advance this particular programming called the avatar of God? And so as we take on the physical form, it has a beginning, quote unquote. It has a peak, and then it has a drop-off point, as you said, towards the end into entropy. That entropy, again, is a recycling, because we are always in movement. There is no backward movement. There's always a forward movement and a forward momentum in the consciousness of humanity. So yes, I see exactly what you're talking about. And just to kind of wrap this up, so that we don't want to hold you any for I'm not taking over your spot, brother Rich, but I just wanted to kind of encapsulate this,
Mhm.
that what you're speaking about as far as circumstances that happen, you happen to be in that space in that time. You'll have to also look at your thought process.
Mm.
What was your thought process like? What were the women's thought processes like?
Mm.
Because your thought, as we teach in our universe, that thought has as a mechanism a compass that
Mm.
guides you to where the actual programming in the thought is due for expression. So
Mm.
if you have, say, for instance, a hostile feeling in your job and you hate this person and, oh, I wish I could just, cold cock them, just do something to them. What happens is that feeling builds up and that thought guides you to the point where you're going to manifest that feeling. The thought feeds on that particular emotional signature. And so what happens? You say, well, I'm going to take a visit, vacation. I'm going to get away from this fool and I'm going to go ahead and go to Timbuktu someplace. And I'm going to go ahead and say, to hell with these people. I hate them still, but I'm going to go over here.
Mm.
But when you go over there, you said, Timbuktu, and you step off the curb and get hit by a truck. What you don't understand is that the particular energy that you now evoked for completion visited you because
Mm.
you did not have the way to
Ooh.
displace that into a positive return. All you did was have that person as the target of your pain and of your suffering. And so that target, you became the target of the
Yeah.
pain and suffering.
Mm.
So, as I say to brothers and sisters, clock your thoughts every now and then. Do an inventory of your thinking process. Write down what it is that you feel someone did to you, or so forth. And you'll find out that the person that you think is persecuting you is actually you. Because
Mm.
after you leave that person, it's your thought process that connects
Mm.
you to that moment. And so what happens to you? You're suffering for something that person really don't even give a damn. They're not even thinking about you. You're thinking
Mhm.
about them and suffering because of what you
Mm.
feel they did to you.
Mm.
So you have to
Mm.
now monitor your thinking process. I tell my students to write down all the things that they feel have become challenges to them, to their sleep, to their peace
Excellent.
of mind, to all
Excellent.
of these things, and then actually examine that to see whether or not it's you that's putting all the power of that pain
Excellent.
into that.
Excellent.
Mm.
Hey
Phenomenal.
Billy, I know you got to go real quick before you leave, my brother. This is a quote. This is actually a question. This is a quote you said on another show that I wanted to ask you about. You can answer this, then you could get out of here before Dr. Valentine goes in on it. You said there's nothing solid until consciousness interacts with an electromagnetic wave and it collapses it into a particle.
Mhm.
What I want to talk to you about. So you gave an example. I think you gave an example of a home.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at my home. My home collapses back to a wave form, and it doesn't exist until I look back at it. What I want to ask you, Billy, I gotta inject a little bit of humor in it. Nigga, does that apply to my son? If I'm not looking at my son, is he a wave? Like,
Actually, yes.
He's a perception in your own mind.
is my son a
Yeah.
waveform, Billy? Come on,
Yeah.
Billy.
He's a
Don't tell
wave.
me.
He's a wave.
Yeah.
We found through quantum physics and quantum mechanics that
Bro,
all matter
Yeah.
exists as waves first,
even if they have a soul, even if the matter has a soul.
Before
even if they have a soul.
before
Yeah,
they become a particle.
Yes, before they become a particle. It's all
Wow.
electromagnetic frequencies. Now, so it's called wave particle duality in physics, right? Wave particle duality. And in 2015, they took the very first image of a wave converting into a particle. They caught it mid-conversion.
Yeah.
It's on physics.org.
Yes.
They discovered this. They saw the conversion process happening. They had done the double slit experiment many thousands of times and realized that when you're not looking, it's waves. When you are looking, it converts into particles.
Mhm.
For those of you who want to go research the double slit experiment, you'll find out more about what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then they discovered a way to observe the conversion process from a wave into a particle. And they now know that everything in the entire universe exists in superposition of each other.
Yes.
So, and what that means is every potential probability exists before it actually happens and collapses into our reality. It exists as probabilities through waves. Waves of what? Waves of light. Light waves that the human being eye can pick up because these waves are at different frequencies. the human eye only picks up 1% of the light spectrum, actually slightly less than 1%. We can't see gamma rays, we can't see X-rays, we can't see ultraviolet, infrared, and so forth and so on. But the lights, we mostly see red, blue, and green. RGB is what we mostly see. And from there, you can extrapolate, all the colors of the rainbow. But that these electromagnetic waves exist. But what's really interesting is that every time they do this test, they discover that conscious observation of a wave will then collapse it into the particle that it's supposed to be, which goes for every atom that exists in the entire universe. So that means you're made of atoms, I'm made of it, your sun is made of atoms. He exists as waves of potential until a conscious observer, including himself, collapses it. Now, the collapse is so instantaneous, we can't even perceive it, but it is a wave particle duality. Research that and you'll find out that I'm giving actual science fact.
Indeed, and he's talking about the collapse. The speed is the speed of thought. And you have to understand that thought is the glue that coagulates and gives us, and that's the mind of God working through us. The mind of God collapsing and using the vision, because you remember your sight, sound, smell, and taste are not just incidentals. They are the base of the pyramid of life. The pineal is that eye that is above the pineal. Now, what you're looking at is fire, air, water, and earth, sight, sound, smell, and taste. Each one of these elements that you see, the 4 elements, are the word of God. That's the W-O-R-D, is the fire, air, water, and earth made flesh. What happens is when you are looking at something, these things are actually living principles of elements. They're conscious as themselves. When these 4 elements, which are the word of God, are now fixed into the avatar of God, they're not only conscious as themselves, because when they're conscious as themselves, fire doesn't know what water is, water don't know what earth is, and so forth. But when they become part of this coagulating mechanism that takes waves into particles, they become conscious of themselves. And what you are conscious of physically is based upon how the word made flesh processes consciousness in third density. So your fire, air, water, and earth, or the force, what they call the 4 elements, which is the 4 senses, there are no 5 senses. The 5th sense, the 5th sense is touch, which is actually something that happens only when you have, it's not conscious of itself. What is conscious of themselves are fire, air, water, and earth. These are the 4 living principles, the word of God. And what you are collapsing into the physical flesh is the mechanism that the Creator gave you in order to be a creator in third density.
Indeed. All right. So let's continue. My brother Billy.
Let's free our brother. Yes.
brother Billy had to go while he didn't know when he was gonna stop, but brother Billy had to get out of. He had to catch that flight. So we're gonna keep going. Dr. Valentine, let me ask you about this, my brother. I mean, first of all, I want to tell everybody, make sure y'all sign up to Dr. Valentine's workshop he got coming up. I mean, I'm totally excited about it, and the ideas you're gonna present to the people in terms of flat Earth and the way the universe is structured. I think that is beautiful. Tell the people how they can sign up for that again before we continue.
Well, what we would ask them to do is to go to our university's website. By the way, we're starting our new semester for the spring semester on March the 4th. So if you want to sign up, just go to www.uksnow.org. That's U as in United, K as in King, S as in Science, NOW.org. And on that same site, you can sign up into our mailing list by going to where it says contact. Click where it says contact and just fill out the form that will put you directly onto our mailing list, and then we'll send out information directly to you when we're going to have that particular webinar. The other thing too is that if you wish to sign up for our upcoming program, our upcoming semester, then you just click where it says registration, fill out the form, and in that last box, just put registering for MPSY, which is Metaphysical Psychology 1, the spring semester, 2023. And then our administrative assistant will be in contact with you. The other thing is that if you wish to get in contact with me directly so that we could deal with any of our services, you can call 847-1291. Again, 800-847-1291. And you know the other services that we have
Yeah.
that we deal with against that type of
Yeah.
attack.
Y'all
And,
know what we talking about. Y'all know
yeah,
what we're talking
and
about.
then
Yeah.
consciousness as well. I'm dealing with private consultations, health consultations, and the whole 9 yards. We have and if you also interested, I think I gave brother Rich the number to call for our ISM for homeschooling, because they're actually attacking our children in school. We trying to take their minds. So we've had this online institute for young people starting at age 6 or 7, depending on the child's aptitude at age 6. And we do have fantastic teachers. If you want your children to be taught at home and homeschooled the right way, with the right culture, with the right mentality, then check out ismhomeschool.org. ISM, that's Institute for Self Mastery, ismhomeschool.org. And if you're interested again, just call 800-847-1291. Thank you, Brother Rich.
Indeed. I got I know we've been on here for 2 hours, so I just
Oh,
got a couple of more two more questions before you get out of here, Doc.
okay.
You've been on here a while. I want to appreciate Doc. Billy just had to skate. I tell y'all he had a flight to catch. So
Yeah,
shout out to Billy for participating in tonight's discussion.
indeed.
Absolute amazing discussion. I'm thankful to be a part of history tonight and be a part of this conversation. I want to continue this conversation, Doc. We're talking about viewing things from a quantum perspective,
Right.
and there's a lot of talk about grounding. And grounding is gonna be, I feel as though just like meditation became popular in the 90s and the 2000s, I feel as though grounding is gonna become the new form of meditation in the next 20 years. What I want to ask you, Doc, is grounding, planting your feet in the dirt and reconnecting to Earth's healing energy. I want to ask you if that's powerful, just how powerful is, because our skin is our largest organ, just how powerful is burying your whole body in dirt? And I think you said, did you bury your body? They buried you in
They
dirt when you was
buried me
young.
in dirt when
So
I
talk
was
to me about,
12.
we're talking about grounding.
Yes.
How powerful is burying your whole body in dirt? That shit must be crazy powerful. If ground is powerful, Doc, talk to me, my
Yeah, it
brother.
has to be the right grounding earth, though. You don't want
Okay.
polluted earth. You
Yeah.
want the ripe and the rich, where, when you go down to the tropics, especially,
Uh-huh.
and you want to bury yourself at the beach. That could be also a little bit harrowing, because when I was buried, I could feel either it was the living, the things that were in the ground, and they brought certain. I can remember them bringing dirt to the area where they had buried me. So I
Mm.
think they had some kind of consecrated earth that they put me in as well. But what happens, you have to remember that every element that they have discovered on the periodic table, as well as those that they have yet to discover, are in you, because you
Mm.
occupy the third density, and occupying third density means that everything in third density is already in you. Third density exists because you exist, and it is the preliminary, like they showed you that in the Bible. They talked about in the beginning, they talked about how all the different things were created in sequence, and then on the sixth day, they call it, that's when the man appeared, or
Mm.
the avatar appeared. Well,
Mm.
everything was prepared. You prepared the way yourself by casting the necessary engrams of thought into third density that would create the hologram, and create the Merkaba, create all of what is necessary for you to exist in a specific playground for the mind, so that you could become that feedback mechanism for the One Most High.
Mm. I want to talk to you, Doc. The next question is about something that is important in this manifestation process. Is something we call divine alignment. And like I said, there's so much confusion in what we call this new age movement. It's being led by a group of individuals who are, new to this information, and maybe they don't have it in their DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Divine alignment, and they may say divine, and when you're in divine alignment, you will feel comfortable. But what I find, Dr. Valentine, is that when I'm uncomfortable is when I make the breakthrough.
Mhm.
So what I want to talk to me about being in divine alignment and being uncomfortable, because it seems like being uncomfortable gets you to that next stage that you want to get to. But if you're comfortable, you sort of just stay stagnant.
Yeah.
Being comfortable, you stay in one position. So it seems like being in divine alignment does not mean being comfortable. It often means being uncomfortable. So talk to me about divine alignment and being uncomfortable.
I just scratched myself. So
Yeah.
um, don't worry about it, family. I'm
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
If you talk about divine alignment and this feeling that you have of is because you have a feeling of lack, and mostly the reason for that happens when fear comes and takes precedent.
Mm-hmm.
Fear is the one that puts you into all places of inconsistency, of insecurities, of you not trusting your own mind, trusting your own way of deciding what you should do from A to B and so forth. So when you understand how fear works and what it does, you could see that the Alcoholics Anonymous, I use that. It says, um, what is it called? Fear is false evidence appearing real.
Mm-hmm.
And the false evidence appearing real is you believing that you don't have the ability and you don't have the capacity to overcome any challenge that comes your way because you signed a contract to face certain challenges. You don't remember that you did, but when you came back into the flesh and you were baptized through the waters of your mother's womb, you were baptized back into and you were consecrating the contract that you had when you first came through. And you don't remember it because if you remember, a lot of us do come back remembering. That's the
Mm-hmm.
beauty. That's why
Mm-hmm.
some kids have the ability to do what? They can play Chopin. They
Mm-hmm.
can play Mozart at 5 years of age. Why is it that they can play Mozart at 5 years of age? Because they've come here already knowing with the contract that this is what it is that they wanted to do. They had the will to do that. So, as you're saying, the things that you're looking for inside of, for what you're looking for as far as clarity, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for clarity. The main thing is clarity. Don't ever distrust the fact that you do have the ability
Mm.
to see clearly if at some point you don't give in to fear, because that's what fear does to you. Fear
Mm.
causes you to circumvent your will. You do have
Mhm.
the will to overcome any and everything, and your what you are and who you are is already encoded in every cell in your body. The
Mm.
challenges you face are the challenges you already know you have the ability to overcome.
Mm.
So never think that any challenge that is facing you is something you can't overcome because you brought yourself to that moment. Your thought
Yes.
process brought you to that moment in order for you to deal with whatever it is that was inside of you that needed to be expressed, that needed to be challenged, that needed to be tested.
Indeed.
So go forward from there and go forward with courage, but with caution, and to make sure that whatever it is that you're doing righteously. Okay?
Mm. I'm,
Righteously.
I'm loving this. I'm loving this, Doc. Next question, because I know we press with time. They say Bobby said one time, every nigga, he said every nigga is a star. I know
Every naga.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah, every nigga. I know that. When you talk about Baphomet, there's a symbol of an inverted pentagram, and I was thinking if every every man is a star, every woman, man, whatever is a star.
Mhm.
If we're inverted, if we're upside down, that's a yoga pose when you're inverted, and they actually consider that to be very beneficial when you're upside down. So if the human star is upside down, Dr. Valentine, what's happening, Doc? Because that's something that 98% of humanity, we're not upside down, but there's a certain aspect. I know there's certain coaches that they sleep in an inverted way, and there's certain people that practice inversion. So talk to me about inversion and the impact on consciousness of
Mhm.
humanity.
Well, inversion therapy is to put you back in the womb,
Put you back.
because
Wow.
essentially when you were first
Wow.
born, as you were exiting, you exited upside down.
I'm saying, wow.
You see, and what that does, it puts you into that state of rebirth, so
Mm.
that when you're doing that, you notice that if you look at the 5-pointed star, head,
Mm-hmm.
legs, and that's what they deal
Yeah.
with Allah, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're dealing with that, you convert that, you revert that. That's in the ancient time, that's the representative of the fall of man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what we do is we fall and we rise, we fall and we rise. And what we do is we mimic that in yoga positions in order to show that when we do stand right back up again, we always assume that position in our minds, that we will always come out right side up.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So as far as inversion therapy, it's good because the oxygen in the air and what do you call it, that usually because we're standing most of our lives at that point and that point, what you do is you bring that blood back into your brain, and you have to do it
Mm-hmm.
slowly. Don't do it all at once. You're bringing a certain amount of blood that is only pretty much doesn't really reach the pinnacle in your head. That's why if I could turn this around, you'd see that I have a teeter totter,
Mm-hmm.
and I go on my teeter totter every now and then when I want to, wake up some brain cells in my head. But inversion essentially is a way for you to look at your circumstance as well. Say, as you come into a bad situation, how would you invert that situation? That exercise is to show you how you can invert a situation from bad to good.
Mm-hmm.
What is the good part of something that you see, that you're facing, that you're going through? How do you invert that moment so that it comes up a positive energy? You don't want to invert the bad energy. You want to make sure that you maintain it and sustain it. But when you are upside down and you have to look at a perspective of the world from a whole other perspective, okay, and that's what your name of your thing is, perspective. What is the quantum perspective of
Quantum
God?
perspectives. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Your perspectives essentially, sometimes when you're challenged and the challenge seems insurmountable, your perspectives begin to go back into your brain. How do I deal with this? How do I deal with it?
Right. 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 Right.
But we're dealing with it based upon solutions of standing right side up. The solution is actually, how do you invert the situation in that? How do you go completely opposite to what it is that's facing you so that you come out on top and everything comes out as peace, instead of you instigating and accelerate and what's that accelerating or escalating
That's
the
good. Okay.
situation into something that worsens it.
Mm-hmm.
So I like your approach to inversion. That inversion is always to look at the opposite of everything, because it's the opposite essentially that's trying to show you what it is. If a challenge comes, then the opposite, which is the solution to that, comes. When you ask the impeccable question, since the universe is the total answer and is always will be the answer,
Mm-hmm.
once you as the avatar ask the impeccable question, then the impeccable value and the
Mm.
impeccable nature of the universe will always answer you.
Wow. Doc, I'm gonna tell you, Doc. Man, I'm happy we had this show tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing show. I mean, amazing show. Oh man, Doc, leave here.
Yeah,
I can't wait for you to do this workshop.
yeah,
I want to make sure we have do a show, but right before the workshop.
yes.
But let the people know. I got all of Dr. Valentine's information in the description of this video, by the way. So if you want to know anything he's talking about, a lot of it is in the description. But I want to allow you, before we end, Doc,
Yeah.
let the people know one more time how they can reach you and anything you got coming up, Doc.
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation.
Yes, sir.
It was Billy, and Billy and I felt really comfortable with a kindred spirit with you and he,
Mm,
and I feel really good when I can stretch. Only
mhm.
my wife and I can talk this way, but very out of the realm when you could talk with other brothers and sisters about this situation.
Mhm,
I will tell you that I will bring scientific information that is being suppressed about the flatted plane and what it is that the government is suppressing to not let you know what's going on. How it began with Pope Pius VII, and how it is that the Catholic Church is the one that edits all books that
mhm,
are actually distributed in Western civilization.
mhm,
All books that are distributed in the education system of Western civilization are first edited in the Vatican. So you have to understand that they have a Luciferian protocol that they're dealing with, but it's not the same Luciferian protocol that we deal with in the occult. It has to
Mm.
do with them taking down all edifices of truth. So I do promise that you will have verifiable proof so that the people who actually laugh at you talk about, oh, you're a flat earther and you must be crazy. Those who ridicule don't understand that in the next 10 years, this will be a matter of fact reality.
Wow.
It will be a matter of fact reality, and that is going to be, and that's what we're teaching. We're going to be teaching in the university because when you go to the third level in our university, there we teach you all of the sciences of the so-called flatted planes. But if you want to get in contact with us for any of our services, 800-847-1291. If you want to deal with Novatech, if you want to deal with, which is a black-owned trading platform that deals with forex and cryptocurrencies and so forth. You can get in contact with Brother Reggie. I think his number is 415-756-5676. That's 415-756-5676. If you want to deal with the Juice Plus, which I recommend highly because you brought up a very important point about the nutrition that we don't get anymore. This concentrated nutrition that is actually grown on family farms. The Juice Plus is not grown on factory farms. It's all from family farms around the world. All organic, higher than the organic. It's actually NFS, National Safety, NSF, National Safety Foundation, which is higher than any of the organics that the FDA gives you. And you can talk to Nanette. That's my daughter-in-law. Her name is Nanette, and it's 404-543-3245. Call her, but please do not harass her. Please call her, or best yet, text her and tell her that you're interested in dealing with it. 404-543-3245. And once again, I want you to support Brother Rich.
Thank you.
That goes without saying. This brother is a legend in what it is that he has been able to do to keep this information fluid because it was stymied for a while. It was you and Brother Black Dot. Black Dot opened up the faucet once again once he invited me to the platform, and that was like decades ago. You kept it flowing in the directions like the Euphrates River, that four rivers that came from the center of our earth that flowed outward. You're the one that's guiding that information out to all our brothers and sisters around the flatted plain, and I commend you with that. And lastly, if you feel like you'd like to give us a little gift, we have a PayPal. That's Kemet Earth, Kemet, and that's Earth, EARTH, at gmail.com. Kemet Earth at gmail.com. Pennies, dollars, whatever. We appreciate all of it, my wife and I. And with that, Brother Rich, thank you so much for this experience. It's been a blast for me. I'm going to go and now tell my wife how great an experience I had here tonight.
Indeed, family. Once again, amazing show. If you want to donate uh to Doc and everything he's done throughout the years to feed us information, and as we know, information is food. It is light energy. Make sure you send your support to the brother via PayPal, Kemet at gmail.com. And there's about 4,000 of you in here tonight, right now. So make sure you show the brother support. PayPal at Kemet at gmail.com. Dr. Valentine, I can't thank you enough. Every time I call you, you're more than willing to come on the show. We're gonna ride till the wheels fall off, Doc. we gonna
Ride or die. Ride
we
or
gonna
die.
ride till the wheels fall off. Family, thank you for listening.
Give thanks.
I'm just thankful to be in this position. With that being said, I'll see you next time, family. Peace.
Peace.